Welcome to the first video on this channel where I'm going to be doing a lot of tier lists and stuff like that. So I started off today with Zelda because it's one of my favourite franchises of all time. And I've seen a lot of tier lists where people just, well, I don't know what they're doing. They've clearly just got it wrong. And this is the true list for 3D Zelda dungeons. All correct. Nothing mistaken here. But of course, if you guys do disagree with me, feel free to tell me. Okay, so we're going to get straight into this. We're going to be doing a lot more tier lists just like this one. But let's begin with 3D Zelda dungeons. So this includes Ocarina of Time up to Skyward Sword. We're not including Breath of the Wild because I don't even class those as dungeons, to be honest with you. So we're not including any mini dungeons or anything like that. Just main dungeons. Okay, so we're going to start off with the Deku Tree. Now, it's very hard to rank starting dungeons in Zelda. So I think for the Deku Tree, I think you've got to put it around, I'd say B tier, just for the fact that it is the first 3D Zelda dungeon. Um, it's not a flawed design. I think it is what it is. It's a starting dungeon, first child dungeon, and it's okay. Not really too much to add. Woodfall Temple from Majora's Mask, also the first dungeon of that game. I believe this temple, you see, this might change halfway through, but I'm gonna put it in the A tier, okay? And hear me out on this. I believe the boss is a good boss, definitely better than Deku Tree. Um, it I enjoy the mechanics more in Woodfall Temple, and I just enjoy the atmosphere more and how you get to it. It just it's a better first dungeon in my opinion. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Snowhead Temple. As you can see, these are in no particular order at all. Snowhead Temple, I'm also going to go ahead and put in. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the. I'm going to put it in the B tier. I think. I don't think it's quite as good as A, like Woodfall Temple, mainly for the fact that it can get a bit frustrating when you fall down and you have to make all your way back up again. And in Majora's Mask, you actually have to redo, you know, puzzles that you did if you do fall down, which can become very frustrating indeed. Next up, we've got the Great Bay Temple. Well. I think I'm also going to put this in A tier, mainly for the fact that it's a top two water dungeon in my opinion, and not only that, it's a very well designed dungeon. Okay, the boss, it's not a great boss, but we'll get to bosses on another tier list. But it's a very well designed dungeon. It's challenging as well, and a lot of dungeons, like the starting dungeons, aren't challenging, so they're a little bit lower down on my list. Most of them anyway. Um, but Great Bay Temple, it's very challenging indeed. All the water temples are really. But yeah, I think it deserves its spot on A tier. Not quite an S tier dungeon in my opinion, but we'll get to the S tier dungeon when we get there. Oh well, we're here already. So Stone Tower Temple goes straight up in the S tier, mainly for the fact of the atmosphere, the music. You got to take into account the music on this one. It's incredible. I'm not gonna give you a little example because I'm not very good at music, but the gimmick of the dungeon where everything turns upside down when you hit the switch, um, and mainly the just the puzzles. Okay, we're not going to talk about the boss. The boss doesn't really count in these dungeons. It's more just focused on the dungeons, the puzzles, the atmosphere, the music, and the enemies. And I think this is definitely the best Majora's Mask dungeon, and it's an S tier for a reason. Dragon Roost Cavern, I think it's definitely the best starting dungeon in a Zelda game, so I'm gonna put it above Woodfall Temple in A tier. I think it's a good starting dungeon, and there's not really much to say about it than that. It's a good starting point for a game, and it's solid for Wind Waker. Next, we got Forbidden Woods. Ooh, this is a tough one. I think I think it's very similar to my opinion to do with Snowhead, but it's a little better than Snowhead, I think. So I'll put it a little bit ahead of Snowhead. Um, that might change, but I don't think it's as annoying as Snowhead, so it just goes above it in B tier. But talking about annoying, we've got Tower of the Gods, where this may be a little controversial, but I'm gonna go ahead and put Tower of Gods in the C tier. For the fact that the water mechanic when you first enter the Tower of the Gods, going up and down so slowly, it's unbelievable. Um, the just it doesn't, like, the atmosphere is good. That's the best part about the Tower of the Gods. But it just doesn't hit the right notes for me. And this might be different for other people, but for me, it just doesn't quite do it for me. Just a little bit tedious, a little bit frustrating. Earth Temple from the Wind Waker. Oh, it's just an A. Um, I don't, I don't think. I think it's a B plus. I don't think it's A quite. Um, it's just a little bit meh, mainly for the controlling medley. Well, I nearly said melody then. Medley the whole time and using her. It's you have to keep playing the song, and it's a little bit frustrating and tedious in that respect. And you know the dungeon itself, the puzzles and stuff, I just don't find it that enjoyable. So that's why it's not quite an A tier, but it's in the middle of the pack, I'd definitely say. Wind Temple is going to go straight in the A tier. I'm actually going to mix these around, but Great Bay right there. Yeah, that's good. The Wind Temple, I would put above Woodfall and Dragon Roost. I think it deserves to be there in an A plus position. It's a good temple, good solid temple. Now you have a little bit of that controlling again, um, but it's not as bad as the Earth Temple, and I find it way more enjoyable than the Earth Temple. Dark Nuts, good mini boss, and yeah, not too much to say other than that. Wow, we got the forest. Is this Ocarina of Time Forest Temple? No, this is Twilight Princess, Forest Temple. So I think it's a B. I don't. I actually think it's a B minus. I do. Twilight Princess is my favorite Zelda game. I should get that out of the way. But the Forest Temple is a starting dungeon. There's not really too much to it. I actually find the monkeys quite frustrating, and thinking about that now I might demote it. So I want to stop thinking about it because I might demote it because the monkeys just annoy the heck out of me. But it's a good dungeon. It's meh. The Dongo's Cavern. I'm sorry, but this is the first D dungeon. Um, I know we're not taking bosses into account, but terrible boss. But anyway, it's just easy, not much to do. Boring. It's like the worst. It's worse than the actual Fire Temple in Ocarina of Time. So that's all I need to say there. Okay, so Goron Mines. Okay, where are we going with Goron Mines? I See, I think Goron Mines is solid, but whenever I play or watch it, I always find it a little bit boring, and I always tend to skip it. But I'd give it a solid. Uh, I'd give it a solid B, but definitely on the latter end of B. Um, the iron boots mechanic, walking really slowly on the walls, that's the worst part of this dungeon. Lake Bed Temple from Twilight Princess. Okay. I think we're going to go ahead and put this just behind the Wind Temple. Let me move this up a bit. Like that. Just behind the Wind Temple. I don't think it's quite as good as the Wind Temple in Wind Waker, but it's definitely a good water temple. Not quite as good as Great Bay, obviously, in my opinion. But it's a good mechanic. You got a main room. You got to get the water flowing through the main room to get to the boss. And I think it's solid. I really do think it's solid. Arbiter's Grounds. Wow. Okay. I think this is a I think this is an A as well, and I think I would actually just put it behind Lake Bed. I really enjoy this one. Mini boss, great mini boss. Um, and just the atmosphere. And I know it's rehashed from Ocarina of Time's Forest Temple, the pose. But after you get past that bit and you actually get into the actual main part of the dungeon, for me, I find it really enjoyable. And now we've got Snow Peak Ruins, another S tier dungeon. And I think a lot of people do agree with me on this one. I'm going to go ahead and put it above Stone Tower as well. Stone Peak Ruins has a wonderful atmosphere. It's an abandoned mansion in the middle of nowhere, um, hosted by two Yetis. Now, it can get a little bit frustrating when, Yeti keeps telling you where to go and, you keep finding soup items. Um, but that doesn't really bother me. It's quite humorous, to be fair. And it's just, I don't know what it is. It's not like the puzzles are amazing, or it's just the atmosphere and the feeling. And when you play it, it's just mwah, great. Okay, Temple of Time. Um, Temple of Time's always a tough one because I think it's got a great atmosphere, but it's very linear, very meh when it comes to gameplay. So I think I would just put it above the Deco Tree, but not quite as good as the Earth Temple. City in the Sky. Um, I think just behind Arbiter's Grounds. Now, I think City in the Sky is quite a one dungeon where it's like people either like it or you hate it. For me, it's not quite S tier, it's not quite above some A tier, but I think it's decent. Definitely on the A minus side, but it can get a little tedious at times. But it has some great aspects to it. It has some great puzzles. Use the spinner once again, so when you get to use the Beyblades, anything's great. Palace of Twilight. Um, this does actually count as a dungeon. I'm not having it where people say it's a mini dungeon. It's an actual dungeon. It's long enough. I think you got to put this in I think B. I think it's B tier. I think it might just be behind Forbidden Woods. It's a little bit tedious for me, and whenever I go to Palace of Twilight, I'm just like, eh. I don't know whether it's just the atmosphere or when you got to run away from the hands, or the best part for me is generally fighting Zant, and that's about it. But it's an okay dungeon. It goes in the middle of the pack. Hyrule Castle in Twilight Princess. This is it an S tier? Oh no, I don't think it is. I think it's just behind Great Bay for me in high A tier. I think the atmosphere with just the rain pouring down with no music, absolutely brilliant. And then when you actually get into the castle, that light music, and then you start getting close to Ganon, the piano, the dark nuts, the harder enemies. You get to use the spinner again. It's a good dungeon. Skyview Temple. Once again, another starter dungeon. So I think you know where it's going by this point, guys. I think you. I'm just gonna put it just behind the Forest Temple, Twilight Princess Forest Temple in B tier. It's very mad. It's a starter dungeon once again. It's getting you up to speed. It just sucks that you have to return to this dungeon in Skyward Sword. So let's move on to the Earth Temple from Skyward. I think once again this is the middle of the pack, and I think I'm just gonna put it just ahead of the Forest Temple. If we don't talk about the final boss in this one, nothing's you can't really hate too much about it, but for me, it just gets a little bit tedious over time, and it doesn't really have much replayability to me. Okay, Jabu Jabu's belly. Um, I think Jabu Jabu's a C. Um, okay, so we're getting pretty stacked now. Jabu Jabu's a B for me. C, sorry. Just because whenever I go there, it's just it's not really that enjoyable. You know, it's pretty boring, pretty tedious. Not really much replayability to it, but it's definitely not as bad as Dodongo's Cavern. I'll tell you that for free. The Nehru mining facility is going to go straight in the B tier, and it's going to go straight. Um, I think just ahead of the Twilight Princess Forest Temple and the Earth Temple. Actually, yeah. Alright, I actually put it a little bit higher, just ahead of the Deku Tree. I think. Um, I think this is probably the third best dungeon in Skyward Sword. I might regret that later on. I don't know, but there's nothing to hate about this one, and it has some good mechanics, changing from past to future. Um, Speaking of Skyward, Ancient Sistren, or however you want to say it, the Water Temple. That's what I call it. It's gonna go straight in the A tier, just behind City in the Sky. Sorry, this is getting a little bit stacked now, guys. Just behind City in the Sky. So yeah, it's you know, I don't I don't know necessarily would say this. I mean, it's definitely not the best water temple. It's probably the worst, to be fair, but it's definitely one of the best Skyward Swords dungeons. But we got Sandship, and this is the best Skyward Sword dungeon. So let me move it up to A, and I'm gonna put it just behind Twilight Princess's um, Hyrule Castle. I don't think it's got quite the atmosphere as Hyrule Castle, but it's a great dungeon. You actually feel like you're on a ship. It's got a great mini boss. The items suck a little bit, the bellows, but it's okay. The Fire Sanctuary, we're getting to the end now. The Fire Sanctuary, it's got to go in the B, I think, and it's got to go just behind, just ahead of Skyview, I think. Um, I don't hate it, but fire temples in Zelda games, they are usually trash, or just meh. So we're gonna go ahead and put that in BT. I don't really have much to do against it. I do have a lot against Skykeep though. Um, we all know the puzzle that makes this terrible, so let's just go ahead and put this in the C tier. To be honest with you, just behind Jabu Jabus. Moving on to the Forest Temple from Ocarina of Time. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and we're going to. I think we are going to put this in the S tier. Um, Not ahead of Stone Tower, I don't think, but it's the atmosphere. It's the feeling of being there, and it's the first times they did it with the pose. So if you haven't played Twilight Princess first before this, then this is gonna feel great anyway. And it's just a good dungeon, man. Very mechanically sound. Okay, so the Fire Temple from Ocarina of Time. Very meh, very meh. I put it just behind the Nehru mining facility from Skyward. It's very meh, very bland, not too much to it. And yeah, not too much. But we got the Water Temple from Ocarina of Time now. And we're gonna go ahead and put this straight up in the S tier. And I'm not just doing that because of reputation. I'm generally doing that because of the challenge and the complexity and the mini boss. But I will do a separate mini boss video, and I will put this just behind Snow Peak, I think. Okay, so Shadow Temple. I think this is a A. I'm just gonna put it just behind A tier, and the Shadow Temple mainly relies on its atmosphere and its, kind of edginess. If it didn't have that, it wouldn't be as good as it is, but it has that, and it's definitely an interesting one to play through. A little bit short, unfortunately, but definitely good. So final two here, we've got the Spirit Temple. We're gonna go ahead and put the Spirit Temple in the A as well, and we're gonna put it just behind Hyrule Castle, Twilight Princess. Once again, it's a little bit short, but there is a child and adult places to go in this dungeon and mixes it up a little bit. Um, Good boss, good item, and overall a good dungeon. Now we've got the final one. We've got Ocarina of Time Ganon's Castle. I think it goes in the B tier because it's a little bit tedious. It's a little bit repetitive. I'll put it just behind. or just ahead of Deku Tree. And that's the tier list, guys. So tell me what you think. I've got the Snow Peak Ruins Water Temple, Stone Tower, and Forest Temple in the S tier, which I think is fair. I would agree with this. I'm just looking over it now if I would make any changes. The only D tier is Dodongo's Cavern. But yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you for watching, guys. If you just want to look here, I'll just give you that right there. And Dodongo is in D. And yeah, thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you guys on another tier list video.